Okay, it's March 21st, 2016, at just past 7 p.m. We're calling to order this meeting of the Brattleboro Development Review Board. As you can see, we have only 6 members tonight. And before we get to the opening remarks, I assume many of you know that we generally have 7 people. And as I go through my remarks, you can consider whether you wish to be heard by 7. If you'd like to continue to the next meeting, we can't guarantee that. But you could at least avoid being heard by a 6-member board tonight. Any vote is going to have to be by 4, whether it's out of 6 or out of 7. So I suppose your odds could be a bit better out of 7. I'm going to give my opening remarks now that I do before every meeting. I see other people here who have heard these many times, including a past chair, and if you'll just tolerate them, I'll go through them. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity, and perhaps your only opportunity, to comment on and provide evidence related to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the Environmental Court, that court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from our hearings, the regulations, or applicable law, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and decision of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by the board, so I strongly encourage any of you who wish to speak up at this hearing. As we're on the record, we're going to ask that you swear or affirm your testimony will be truthful. So if the applicants and anyone who thinks there's any chance they might speak would please stand and raise your right hand, I'm going to swear you in. Somebody's going to speak, I'm sure. Oh, okay. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? I do. Okay. And if you change your mind and I've not sworn you, please let me know, because you're not on the record if you're not sworn in. Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. And that's 4 votes, as I just said. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it is the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town does not have a special standing before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, the town attorney, or any other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant or any other interested parties. Mr. Bannon, has this meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Our first order of business is to approve or edit the minutes from our previous meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of February.
It's after the holiday.
The 17th? 17th, 2016?
I so moved.
17th, okay. Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. My understanding, Mr. Bannon, is that the applicant for Delta Epsilon 2015-220 has moved to continue. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
No, that hearing has been continued already from November 16th originally. But my understanding is they've got some other issues going on. Can we have a motion to continue that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of continuing application 2015-220?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? It passes 6-0. Because we only have 6 people, there are no alternates tonight, and Mr. Whittle, you're appointed for all of the applications. It's appropriate at this time to disclose the ex parte communications that may have occurred with respect to any of these applications or any conflicts of interest. I understand that the sketch plan review for the Holton home is going to be presented by Jonathan Sicoscio, who's an architect with Stevens & Associates. Mr. Sicoccio's father is currently putting in cabinets in my kitchen, but I don't view this as a conflict of interest. I'm just disclosing it so that it's on the public record. If anybody has a problem with me in that application, or if there are any interested parties who feel that that might be a problem, now is the time to mention it. Any other conflicts of interest or ex parte communications? Hi.
I had Bob Stevens asked me what was on the agenda at town meeting. And I mentioned that Bradley House was on the agenda, but we didn't talk about it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. The first application is application 2016-8, the Windham Foundation, request for subdivision approval in Local Act 250. All right, Mr. Miskovich,
Hello,
how are you?
Chairman. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Could you tell us about your project, please?
I'd be delighted to. Let me first apologize. What you're looking at right now is a subdivision plan that was submitted to the zoning administrator just before the meeting, and it is slightly different than the subdivision plan that was submitted with the application. And I'm happy to talk about the differences in the plan. But it's a pretty straightforward subdivision of a conforming lot on the Retreat Farmstead parcel. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Craig Miskovich. I'm an attorney with Downs, Rockland Martin, and I represent the Windham Foundation.
Bob Allen, President and CEO of the Windham Foundation.
I'm Buzz Schmidt. I'm with the new organization Retreat Farm Limited.
And so maybe it's easiest to talk about our request today by mentioning what we're not here for. Mr. Schmidt is going to be conducting a pretty impressive and thorough redevelopment of the Retreat Farm parcel, but we're not here seeking any approval for that or submitting any information regarding it at this point, although if you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Schmidt would be happy to answer those questions about some of those plans. We're not here for site plan or local Act 250 approval or any other changes with respect to the plan. It's a pretty limited scope of a request, which is just a subdivision of a larger parcel. This Retreat Farmstead is part of a PUD. That PUD has a master plan. It was adopted about a decade ago, and then that plan was amended with the construction of the Grafton Village Cheese Company facility on the Retreat parcel. So right now, that Retreat Farm parcel is 34 acres or so, and it contains much more than just the Grafton Village Cheese Company manufacturing facility, which is identified on the plan on sheet 1 of 2 as Grafton Village Cheese, LLC. It includes all of the other buildings of the historic Brattleboro Retreat Farm. So the request tonight is really twofold. One is to subdivide off lot 2B from that larger Retreat Farmstead parcel. Not modify the master plan, not modify the PUD or anything else. And second is to talk a little bit about some of the plans Mr. Schmidt has for the larger parcel, and then get the board's approval for an administrative approval that may come later with respect to the southerly boundary of the parcel on lot 2B. So I think we're going to eventually, as the plans and the redevelopment of this parcel goes forward, we'll likely move that southerly boundary, which is the boundary between really the cheese manufacturing facility and the rest of the buildings. We might move that further to the north, snugging it up closer, a little closer to the building. But again, we're not here to request that approval tonight, but possibly get your approval that subsequent approval could be administratively approved.
Was the only change between the two plans the enlarging of this parcel, so that's a straight line across the west, the sort of west side of the subdivided
That's
parcel?
right. So now what will happen is on the westerly boundary will run on the existing boundary between the Brattleboro Retreat land and the Windham Foundation land, all the way to the end of that parcel, returning back along along Linden Street, Route 30. And then the southerly boundary, right now, as we've described it and shown this, it will just be the center of the traveled way of that driveway between the two parcels, and then just missing the wagon shed, so a little bit to the south of the wagon shed and returning to that westerly line. That makes the most rational sense right now, and it's difficult to know exactly how the development of the project will move forward. So the Windham Foundation and Retreat Farm Limited will be entering into an agreement where they're going to work together and modify the easements and access areas as the particulars of the development become known.
There's no wetland on the subdivided parcel?
None.
And the developed portion of that lot is above the base flood elevation?
I'm pretty sure that is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The new parcel is fully developed, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Lot 2B,
2B.
it is fully developed for the Grafton Village Cheese Company's purposes now.
Right.
It's completely self-contained as a cheese manufacturing facility. There may be additional development on the property later. Of course, we'd be back, before for site plan approval for that development. But it is sufficient to operate the facility now.
At least with this subdivision, there's no plan to change the driveway access?
None. Yeah, I think that driveway is likely to remain even after the redevelopment of the parcel. There may be some other curb cuts requested and some removed further to the north, but that's kind of off plan yet.
That's all the questions I had. Anything else from anybody? Well, I think the new lot seems to leave a cleaner lot 2A, so that's nice. Not that we have any right to say you couldn't have done it the first way in the first place, but
Yeah, it works better with the southerly boundary moved south for the current purposes. But I just want to reiterate our request that if all we do is move that southerly boundary north off of the road in order to facilitate some additional development, as much as we'd love to come back and talk to you about it, if that's all we're doing, we're hoping that we can do that with an administrative approval. Any other approval, site plan, Act 250, all that, of course, would have to come back.
the access pattern would remain the same?
It would stay the
Change
same.
that? Okay. Are there any comments or questions from any members of the public? Okay, hearing none, I think it's appropriate to have a motion to approve application 2016-8, including a provision for the administrative approval should the applicant elect to move the southern boundary, provided that movement doesn't create any new issues that require DRB review.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice
As an
night.
aside, Mr. Chair, Mr. Cuthbertson would often watch a videotape of the proceedings in order to be the seventh vote if that was the request of the applicant.
I miss Mr. Cuthbertson.
So do I.
Yes, Presidio is starting to bloom. I think
Oh, now it's spring. Definitely.
We should probably ask Brian going forward if people indicate they're going to be absent, if they'd be willing to do that, but we don't know with our other two tonight, correct?
That's true, I do not ask.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, those who are in the stands, that's not an option as far as we know. If the 6-member board is a problem, please let us know. We make an effort to bring 7 people, and we have enough for 8 theoretically, but unfortunately, life intrudes. The next application is 2016-25. That's an appeal of a zoning administrator denial of a permit for Marble Dealership Realty, LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm Attorney Steve Bonnet here with Representative of Marble Dealership.
If you just go to the microphone so you're on the record, Mr. Bonnet.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm sure. Mr.
That's
Chair,
quick.
I'm Attorney Steve Bonnet on behalf of the applicant Marble Dealership Realty LLC. We would like to continue this in hopes that we have a full board the next time.
Okay. My general practice is that I think that type of request is appropriate where we can't provide a full board, especially on the first application. Does anybody on the board feel differently? Okay. Well, then we should have a motion to continue application 2016-25.
I so moved.
Okay.
Second.
We'll indicate that that's without prejudice and if you have some future reason for a continuance. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's continued, and could you please note in the email out that we had one continued from today? So we should try to figure out our attendance in as early a way as possible for our next meeting and advise the applicant if we know that we can't have 7 people. I mean, we're a voluntary board.
Right.
I can't dock people's pay.
No, I fully understand.
But we'll make an effort to avoid a logistical challenge a second time in a row.
Yes.
Mr.
We
Bennett.
appreciate that, and we understand that things come up at the last minute for people too. It's difficult. So.
I mean, I can dock people's pay, actually, but it's just not very effective.
So you
Doesn't
think.
work.
Yeah, I'll cut it in half.
I just got
Anyway.
my lister's check today.
Okay, so you folks can go home, and we're sorry we couldn't give you a full board.
Appreciate it, thank you.
The final application tonight is, it's not really an application, but it's a sketch plan review. Is there a reason we don't have a number? Do we not have?
Just because it's not really an application, it's just more of a consensual public gathering.
Okay, well, we're doing a sketch plan review for the Holton home. The site is known as the Bradley House. And if you could come up and tell us about your project, please. I guess I should, for the purposes of being totally candid, indicate that the applicant, Jonathan Sicoscio, designed the cabinets. I don't need to take credit for it from you.
You
for the
changed it too
design.
many times, James.
I changed it many times, but his obligation to me is complete, and we no longer have a business relationship, and I don't view it as something that is going to impact my ability here. And in any event, we're not really rendering a decision, which to me lessens the import of that relationship. Anyway, please tell us about your project.
Thanks for having us. I'm Corey Frazee with Stevens & Associates, principal there and doing the civil engineering and permitting for the project. And this is John Scoccio, architect in the office, here tonight to answer any questions you have about the building itself. He knows more about the specifics of the project than I do. I have two apologies to make. One to you because our client isn't here yet, and two to the client because I told her if she got here at 7:30 she'd be fine because we were last on the agenda.
This is the first we've gotten this far down the agenda this fast in 6 months, but it's not a big deal. I mean, you guys know the project, right?
Yeah, yep. She would like to speak to the financial sustainability of the project, but I imagine, well, we'll probably be talking in
We'll
10
stick
minutes.
around, it's
Yeah.
fine. This will still be one of our shorter meetings. And I understand the challenges.
So I'd like to give you a brief overview of the project, see if you have curiosity questions. We are here just for sketch plan review, but this project is a PUD, and we specifically want to ask you some questions, get your idea about how it will fit into the new zoning regulations, okay? We'll probably be back in a couple months with a formal application. We are in the preliminary elements of both building design and site design.
Now, let me warn you, the regulations are a little bit new to us too.
Okay.
We'll try to
Yeah.
do a good job for you, but we're still getting used to them. So.
Yeah, we'll get used to them together. So, quick overview here. The project is the Bradley House off of Harris Avenue, which overlooks Wontosket Drive, if that gives you a reference point for the project. The existing access road comes off of Harris Avenue up to the top of the site where there's a large plateau with the building, and then there is also a driveway which leaves the property and goes back down to Harris Avenue. What I've done is I've put some light brown shading on the existing building footprint, and then we have an addition proposed on the back, which will add bedrooms to the facility. And there is the potential to do some work at the front of the building and create a porte cochere or a drop-off, similar to the Holton Homes drop-off, if you're familiar with that. There will also be interior renovations to bring the project improvements with regards to accessibility, life safety code. Hi.
Perfect.
Sorry
timing.
about that.
I'm sorry.
They're flying through their agenda.
No, don't be. We had sort of a strange night tonight, and you essentially are our second application where it looked like it was going to be the fourth, so don't worry about
Yes.
it.
Thank you.
This is Cindy Jerome,
Hi.
who is the executive director at Bradley House. So along with the building improvements, there will be some site improvements, formalizing some parking, improving accessibility from the outside into the building with improved handicap ramps, etc. What we know about the project at this point is that we're going to add bedrooms to it, do interior renovations, and probably add some parking. Okay, like I said, we're in the preliminary phases of design, and happy to get into more detail about the proposed project. But we're really here to talk to you about the zoning and the PUD elements of the project. So if you have questions, curiosity questions, maybe we could go through those right now, and then I could get into the PUD discussion.
I have a couple. I understand the porte cochere, am I saying that right?
Yep.
Is possibly not going to happen, but if it does, how are you going to incorporate that in the character of the building?
Well, I think that we would draw on this historic look and the mid-19th century detailing and even the mansard roof to kind of get that to complement the existing building. It's pretty tricky in there because there's an addition that looks like it was really built in the 70s and doesn't match too well. And putting it into that corner on the angle, it's a little bit tricky, but I think that we can draw enough character from the historic mansion.
Is that corner, I'm just going to refer to it as the old part and the new part. Is that corner where they meet, or is that the old part?
You want to point to where they meet, John?
Sure. So the 19th century mansion is here, and it comes up to about this section.
Oh, okay.
And then this rectangle all through here was added in the 70s.
What is the new portion going to look like, if you know? Or what do you know it will look like if you don't know everything?
Well, we don't want to make it match the mansion because then it would draw too much attention from that character of the building. Mm-hmm. And because it's situated towards the back of the property, we're hoping that it will kind of blend into the background mm-hmm. and not be kind of demand attention away from the front of the building. So specifically, we're not quite sure what it looks like, but not as elaborate in detailing and intricate in some of its architectural detailing.
Do you know what kind of view that area has from the road or from the neighboring parcels?
I think that, Cindy, do you have the,
Oh, that's right. Ms. Jerome, I need to swear you in, because you weren't here for that.
Yes.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot. Could you raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you hereby swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Sorry.
so this property was formerly called Hilltop House. And it's literally because this is the plateau, as Corey mentioned, and all of the houses around it look up to this building. And Wantastica Drive is a significant distance lower on the back.
Yeah, you can't really see it from Wantastica. I was curious about the north and south abutting parcels particularly.
Can you speak to that at all?
Sure.
Which I mean on that are the left and right abutting parcels.
Yes, so the south abutter is here,
Right.
and, well, you can see sight lines. This is the outline of the addition, and they
Yeah.
really wouldn't be able to see it at all. It would be behind the 1970s three-story tower.
Right.
And then on this side where Lori is, she would be able to see this. It'd be some distance from the property line, but yes, she would certainly see it.
Is there any consideration given to screening that?
No, not at this time. From this property line is a couple of 100 feet across a lawn.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't think that it would have considerable visual impact beyond what can already be seen.
Okay.
There are trees here that I guess would already obscure it some.
Is the addition going to be different in height than the rest of the building?
It will be either a little bit less or at the same height as the existing building.
Okay. And you said it would be different than the former mansion. Do you know, for instance, if it's going to be clapboards or?
It will be a clapboard type material, so horizontal lines, corner boards, skirt boards.
Flat roof or gabled?
Flat roof.
Did you want to talk about the needs of the home or the complex, Ms. Jerome?
Yes, I would.
Now's as good a time as any to
Okay.
hear you on that.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what material you already have, so look bored if I start to repeat myself.
We have a letter from Stevens and Associates, and we have a plan from Stevens and Associates.
That's right.
We got a brief, we went over a little bit of the history and some of the challenges the Bradley House is now encountering. Talked about how a woman named Cindy Jerome is coming over to save the place. And
If I may interrupt you there, Holton Home has gone through over the last 15 years the sorts of things that Bradley House needs to go through now in terms of addressing life safety concerns, the growing physical needs of our residents, their wishes. They don't want to just take a bath once a week. They want to take a shower at least a couple times a week, that sort of thing. So I'm very familiar with what's happened at Holton Home, and now that the Holton Home Board is also governing Bradley House, and the financial strength of Holton Home and the reputation of Holton Home, we're in a position to secure loans and grants that Bradley House wasn't necessarily in a position to get before. So this is the opportunity to try to address all those issues that were threatening Bradley House's existence. This is our chance to address that. Holton Home's goal is a sustainable, excellent facility. We want to make sure that the care standards stay as high as they are now, but that the setting is more appropriate for the people we serve. When we say sustainable, this may be a little off topic, but you should know that Holton Home's image of sustainable is A business that can pay its bills, a business that can properly capitalize its business and continue to address building concerns, a business that can offer this service at a rate that's appropriate for a not-for-profit. So we are not charging as much as you would find in neighboring communities. And we also see a sustainable business as one that pays their staff a livable wage, that has adequate staffing, that has enriched programs for residents, not just food and nursing care, but activities, enriching things, bringing the community inside. We just, as one of the first things we chose to spend money on at Bradley House since the merger on December 31st, on January 1st, Bradley House staff got their health insurance back. That is our definition of a sustainable business. In order to do all that, we do need to increase rooms. We see it as a win-win because I think you have information on here that the need for more beds in facilities like this is well documented by the government of the state of Vermont, as well as anybody who's doing any demographic studies. We are getting older.
I understand that the goal is both to expand the amount of clients you can serve and to improve the facilities to provide those services. Other than that, is the character of the service provided going to change?
I wouldn't say the character, no. I think care given at Bradley House now is already excellent and has been all along.
I mean, you're going to be serving a new range of clientele that are not the same people who went to Bradley House by virtue of this expansion.
I would say no, although I'll give a caveat. We have a large number of folks on Medicaid who aren't able to pay for their care at both facilities, especially at Bradley House right now. There's a demand for suites, for 2-room units, a small bedroom and a living room, as well as a full bath. There's a long waiting list at Holton Home for the 3 suites that are there. We're hoping these plans will give us 7 suites at Bradley House. We can charge more for them. That underwrites the cost of those who cannot pay for their care. So I'm not sure that it would really change the character. There are several people at Bradley House now who have lined up for the suites that we've told them are coming.
That's not what I was getting at. I just wanted to understand that this will just continue to serve senior citizens who need round-the-clock care.
Yes. Yes,
Just
there
as
will be no
Bradley House
change in
and
that.
Home
There's not a change in use.
Yeah,
No.
okay.
No.
What is going to make the new edition different from the old edition, as far as you know?
As far as what?
As far as you know. I mean, I understand this thing isn't completely designed yet.
Right, and how do you mean by that?
Well, when you referred to the old edition, you said it's very 70s style.
Right.
And presumably you don't intend to build a new edition in the style of the 70s, much as we might miss them.
Bathroom size.
And I was just curious what kinds of things might be different.
Well, I think our room design, now I know this is inside the building and it's the floor plan, but one of the many conversations that Cindy and I have had is about, what is it like to live in these rooms? And, the rooms that are currently in this wing here, they're very dormitory style.
Yeah.
Very small. They're not. There's features in there that aren't useful for accessibility or elderly residents. So our room design really pays attention to barrier-free access and barrier-free design. It pays attention to utilizing the floor space to actually make it an enjoyable living space, as well as having the suites. What else is different about this is we'll have a new dining room and kitchen. We'll have a salon. So this is much more than just adding a block of rooms to give that financial impetus to make the project happen. It's really improving the lives of the residents that stay in the building.
Yeah.
Do other members of the board have some questions? We can always let the abutters go first. I know we have a couple of abutters in the public.
And then I would like to get specifically into the reason we're here tonight. So
Okay.
we can always come back to questions.
No,
if
I'm
you
sorry.
think of them.
Please.
Okay.
Let's-
So you have new zoning regulations out. we've talked to the zoning department and the planning department about this project specifically. This project was a PUD, and there are no longer PUDs. Several of the former PUDs are now categorized, or they are on an institutional. They're in an institutional district. If you look at the zoning map, and this one is not. So Brian has had conversations with Cindy and myself. We think we have an understanding with him about this project and how this should play out, but at the end of the day, he encouraged us to come here and talk to you about this lack of a PUD definition on this property, since we will be back before you in a couple months.
You already got the PUD though, right?
What's that?
PUD's in the books, right?
It has it is a PUD.
Okay.
But there is not a specific mention to this property, nor is it zoned as an institutional lot in the new zoning regulations. So far, do I have that pretty much right?
Yeah, that is pretty much right. Existing PUDs, it's a vested interest, so they continue until the property owner asks for them to be modified. If they are modified, it would come before the board as a minor subdivision. We'll be guided by the existing description of the PUD. Basically, is that this is a care home.
Well, why would this come before us as a subdivision?
It's just that amendments to existing PUDs are treated as a minor subdivision.
Oh, I understand. Procedural.
And the board's consideration should be guided by the description of the PUD in the old code.
Which is what I'm passing out to you. So this is one page out of the old code that references the Baptist home or the Hilltop House
Right.
PUD.
We do have this.
Yeah.
But that is in the old code, so that,
Right.
okay.
I don't know, but Brian printed
right.
it out for our benefit.
So there is reference in this PUD for expansion, which is what we would be coming before you to ask for. And so we want to kind of gauge your acceptance of two things, which is in a PUD, generally you're allowed to do things that aren't in the underlying district. This PUD doesn't necessarily fall into the categories of PUD that are identified in the new zoning regulations. And the underlying zoning is residential neighborhood. And with this, the building is currently over the 4,000 square foot maximum footprint. So we already exceed that underlying zoning requirement. And with the addition, we would exceed the floor area ratio, which is a new calculation in the new zoning regulations. And so, again, because it's a PUD, those sort of things are generally shown flexibility. We felt a little unsure about this because of this PUD not being specifically identified in the new zoning regulations. Brian and the planning department have indicated they were aware of this project and the potential expansion when the new zoning regulations went into effect. But again, you're the board, will be before in a couple months. So we wanted to field questions and gauge your support of that approach when we come back with a formal application. Did I still say that pretty much right, Brian?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's correct.
I feel bad that I didn't completely understand the nature of what you were seeking until you just told it to me. And you're very clear, and that's very helpful to me. But I don't know the answer to the question because I've not had a chance to consider it. And I don't know if any of the board members do. That would be nice, but this is a complex situation because it seems to me as a first impression that if you got the PUD under 5543, that you should be able to continue to operate under those provisions. And that's the way it looks to me. And that seems fair to me. But this is the first time we've addressed this question. I haven't had an opportunity to look at the law. And it doesn't strike me as a simple question. Do you have any opinion on this, Mr. Bannon?
Yes. I think where it would really hit a snag if it were just being done under the residential neighborhood district is the area of the proposed addition. However, the regulations do allow that when you're dealing with a PUD, the density allowed would either be what's allowed in the district or what's allowed by the PUD itself, whichever is larger.
But you can't do away with a PUD by changing a district.
That's correct. The PUD is a subdivision.
And if the prior development guidelines of the PUD provided for expansion and enlargement, I don't see how changing the district or changing the zoning bylaws so that there can be no new PUDs in that district would prejudice their ability to operate under their old PUD development guidelines.
That's correct. That's a vested right.
You agree?
It really becomes a question of whether the proposed expansion seems reasonable to the purpose of the PUD itself.
It's a tremendous relief for me when Mr. Bannon agrees with me.
And we have a similar take as, we're not changing the use. That's one thing where the PUD may come into question, but we're not doing that.
I mean, my read on it is that eventually, once there's a better design here, that our primary concern would be the impact on the residential area. Because it's one of Brattleboro's most beautiful neighborhoods. At one time, I'm sure it was one of Brattleboro's most beautiful houses. And quite frankly, the old addition doesn't look too good. And I think if we were evaluating it, we would use the development guidelines, providing that you could expand, enlarge, or convert the uses and structure, but that the board should pay attention to minimizing the adverse impacts on the surrounding residential area. That's why I was asking about screening and why I was interested in finishes, understanding that you folks haven't made those decisions yet.
Yeah, it's very early.
But when I initially went through the things, that's what struck me as the things that we would want to consider down the road. I've done a lot of talking. We have two members of the public. Did either of you ladies wish to speak about the applicant or the proposal?
Well, I wasn't sworn in, but after this discussion, I do, yes.
Look, why don't you come up to the microphone? You have to do it at the microphone so they can hear you on the television. And I'll swear you in. Since this isn't actually a hearing and there's nothing appealable here, I don't think I actually need to if you really don't want to, but it would make it easier. Just I like to have the same for everybody. Is that okay? Raise your right hand. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay. If you could say your name and your address, and then let us know what...
My name is Laurie Chipperfield, and my address is 113 Harris Avenue. I'm the north of Butter, where the discussion about the new addition would go.
One lot over.
One lot over.
You share the lot.
I share the lot. And Grafton has been a great neighbor, and I think that we're all glad to hear that, yes, they would refurbish the house itself. As far as the addition, we are having a neighborhood meeting tomorrow night, but most people are not really in favor of that because of the impact of more traffic, construction. We are a residential neighborhood. This is the only non-residential property. I think you brought up all the points. There's no screening in this initial plan. There's no consideration of the neighborhood whatsoever. It's basically, that must just be their first go at this. But I think that the impact is greater.
That's why we're not making a decision tonight.
Right.
If they wanted a decision, they would have a design.
Right.
And you would be, as an abutter, you'd be copied on their application, and you should be able to see that design and come to the meeting with as much knowledge as we have.
Correct.
At some point.
Right, and I think that what they don't know is that in the past, there's been significant flooding off that hillside down into my house and the basement. No one's asked questions or talked about it, figured that'll be coming soon, but in any event, we've had the fire department pumped out several times as it all came flying down the hill. And I see the same thing happening with construction will be at the top of the hill, closer to my house. And any change in that property will probably cause something similar, would be my guess. Are there concerns we all have about this new construction? Nothing to do with the refurbishment,
Sure.
everything to do with the new construction.
Mr. Bannon?
I just wanted to jump in and say that this project will have to conform to the requirements of our new zoning code. And one of those things is that it has erosion control during construction. And that's precisely to prevent damage from happening to your property from the construction. So that will be an element. And stormwater treatment is the second element, which means that instead of having water wash off onto neighboring properties, they have to infiltrate it on site or get it into a stormwater, the town stormwater system.
Although I
also have a
can't,
shared driveway with Bradley House, so that's another complication.
although I can't tell you for sure what the design will look like or what's going to happen in a future hearing, our current new zoning regulations with respect to runoff are very strict. And generally, an applicant who might send water to an abutting property will have to have an engineer devise a system that they can represent will stop that from happening. So there's actually a chance here that because new construction is going to implicate certain sections of the new bylaws, they may be forced to improve that one issue to a place where it is not currently sufficient, from a place where it's not currently sufficient to something that has to meet these standards. And in the adverse impacts on the surrounding residential area, traffic and water runoff and aesthetic issues that affect the abutting properties are the primary things that we consider, especially in a residential neighborhood with a lot of character like yours. So one of the purposes of this meeting is to put the applicants on notice of the things we think we're going to be considering on the law. So what you're saying is very helpful to us.
I have one other aspect to all of this, and that's that I think that there was an article in the paper about the growth of the aging population in Brattleboro, which someone mentioned the figure 90. We're talking about 7 additional rooms at this location, and the number that we're seeing is $5,300,000, something like that, for the total refurbishment and 7 bedrooms, which seems exorbitant to me to include 7 additional bedrooms and refurbishment. So not that I want it to get larger, but is it smarter to go someplace else to make all of those additions?
That's one thing we can't evaluate or make decisions on. We have seen some projects that are very expensive and some that are very cheap. But if an applicant complies with the law, our only real decision-making function is to agree that they do in fact comply with the law, to insert conditions in their permit that they need to achieve to comply with the law, or if we feel that there's no circumstance by which they can comply with the ordinance, to reject the application. Because we don't have an application, all of this is premature at this point. But we can't say, you should be doing this somewhere else, this is a waste of your money. I mean, we can say it, but we would be appealed, and the environmental court would say, this is ridiculous. And we would be not doing our job as we're empowered by the law.
Well, those are my initial thoughts about all of this, and we just found out about this a week and a half ago, so.
Sure.
That's, I'm not thinking, planning some of us. So,
If you use email, or if you have a quicker way to get in touch, if you give Mr. Bannon your contact information, he can probably get things to you as quickly or close to as quickly as the town receives them. And my suspicion is that with a full application, we would get things further in advance. That's generally how it goes.
Sign
Okay.
paper.
Well, if you tell him specifically how you want him to get it to you, he'll do that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jeannie Crosby. I live across the street.
You're sworn in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Raised my hand at the right time. My 2 sisters, Laura Chipperfield and Martha Tompkins, as you know, the abutting property across the street. I just wanted to tell the board that some of you may know that I spoke at the select board meeting last week on that issue. And the concern has been that we didn't know, we haven't been involved. And it was my decision personally that I wanted to speak about these issues before we got into a request for a permit. I felt that that was courteous. Although we had not been informed, it was courteous to let the applicants know that there were concerns and questions. So we do have a meeting tomorrow night at which Ms. Jerome will be with a number of neighbors just to talk about those questions and concerns.
Sure.
So that doesn't all get played out once here, and that we can talk about these things and perhaps make some progress before we have a final application. Nobody wants to go redo architectural plans. Screening is a big issue because from that northern abutter, it probably will even stop some sun, which is an issue also. But there are a whole lot of landscaping issues around sight and light and noise from cars, which already are there, but will just increase to some extent. So those things will be talked about at the neighborhood meeting tomorrow evening, and I hope that there is some sort of informal, at least, process for going forward so that there's continuing conversation about this, so that we don't have plans made up and then people come in and say no, or use your time to sort of argue those things out. So just want you to know what my perspective on this is. And thanks to Brian for getting me things immediately already, and Montpelier's been great about it, and the select board, Patrick Moreland's been great. So we do have information from the various town employees, so that's great.
Just one thing to note for the future. If you have a neighborhood association and there are other abutters that have strong feelings one way or another, if there is an eventual application, they need to come here in person. You can't send one person to say what the other guy said.
Yes.
So you should know that going forward, so that when there does come an application, assuming that happens, every abutter who wants to say their piece, they do need to come in person. We can't consider one person who sort of collects
Can they make
comments.
written statements? That was just a question that came
Yes.
to me today from folks who work at town.
Yep, we do that from time to time.
To do that, so that would be another option.
If there are written submissions, if you can get them to me early so I can circulate them
Yes.
to the board so they have a chance to read them before the meeting.
Or the individuals can circulate them. Is it best to go through you?
Yes. You should go through it.
Thank you.
And it's not a huge deal, but if they were notarized, I think that would be
Oh, good. I'm a
better.
notary.
Okay. Charge
I'll bring
$5
my
a
little
pop.
press.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm somewhat nervous sometimes about written testimony submissions
Yes.
getting into the record without oath. This is probably me being overly careful, but it would be a great help if you could let them know that if they need to do that and it's notarized, I won't be as concerned about it as I might otherwise be.
Thank you for
Sure.
that caution and care.
So,
It's good feedback. Thank you.
do you guys have anything you want to add in response to either what the public's brought up or some of the things that we've been talking about?
As a civil engineer, I was thinking about screening and stormwater, so we've covered those things. Things we can look at further, and yes, with the new zoning regulations, stormwater requirements are more stringent. I wanted to bring up one other point on the PUD, and that was just that there is a section on modification of approved PUDs. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page about this being an existing PUD that exists from the previous ordinance.
What section are you talking about?
453 and paragraph 3, paragraph 453C says the Development Review Board may approve changes to the physical location, layout, and design of land development within a pre-existing planned unit development provided that the overall density will be limited to the greater of the density allowed in the applicable zoning district under these regulations or as established in the original approval. We're okay in that regard. It's the new floor area ratio, which isn't really addressed in this modification of approved PUDs. That is the one thing we kind of get tripped up on. So,
Which subsection was it?
C.
Or I would take that as being the floor area ratio as being density, so I think
Okay.
it does address that.
Okay.
There's not a specific standard in the PUD description, but it's quite explicit that expansion is part of that. So-
Yep.
Oh, or as established in the original approval.
That's right.
Yeah, that or is important in my view. Tell me if I'm crazy.
Because the original PUD says they can expand, right?
But does it give a limit to the expansion?
Well, I think the limit is essentially established that we need to set a limit that minimizes adverse impact
Oh,
to the
okay.
neighbors.
All right.
I would say not just to avoid adverse impact, but allows for the purpose of the PUD to actually be accomplished as well.
Right. Now, just a word of caution. For better or worse, people don't hire attorneys and start giving us more advanced legal argument until we get to the real hearing. And I don't know if there's a precedent somewhere out there that the Supreme Court took up that might disagree with what we're telling you right now. But so what we're telling you is not binding right now.
Understand. Yep.
But I think we all agree that that's what's fair, and absent somebody giving us something that says no, in fact, what we're saying is not legal. This is the
Right.
collective opinion of the board.
And provided that you can make positive findings on the impacts that you mentioned earlier.
Right. I mean, the way I view it now is that that's really the nature of the hearing, is whether the adverse impact on the surrounding residential area is appropriate or too much.
Right.
But if there's a Supreme Court decision out there that says when you have new zoning ordinances, this is not in fact grandfathered, and I didn't realize it tonight, but we still have to follow the law, even if we were wrong tonight. And sometimes, there's a framework that this exists in that we're not necessarily aware of. I would be surprised. I don't know about it myself. I would have told you if I did. But I just want to, I want you to understand that we're not bound by what we're telling you tonight. We're bound by whatever the law is.
Yes. But that is helpful, right, Cindy?
Yes.
I mean, this is, you're on the same page with us. We had the similar perspective coming into the meeting, so it's good to confirm that with you folks.
Other thoughts from the applicants? Any other thing from the public since I said those things? Okay. Well, we don't need a motion to do anything, do we?
No, this will be documented in the minutes, so I'll
Okay.
consult with you and summary of what was said.
Right. Well, thank you for coming and telling us about your project, and abutters, thank you for coming us and telling us about your concerns. That's a helpful first step for any project.
Thank you.
Did we have an administrative thing to talk about, Brian? Oh, I do. I'd like to look into further training with Mr. Slate on what our next curriculum item could be, because I felt that the training we had was very helpful, and I don't want that to be our one training session.
Yes, and actually, I spoke this week to Judge Durkin, and he was the additional training. I personally have been interested in conditional use approvals and how to determine the character of the neighborhood. Also, Keysheep test.
Oh. let's have Judge Durkin, why don't we schedule a training in maybe a month or 2 months? I'm thinking that this is something we should do maybe twice a year. I don't want to impose on my fellow DRB members too much, but I was really impressed by our last training.
Yes, I
and
think
how-
it's necessary.
How much it helped us. So I don't want to give it up.
So I talked to the judge and said I talked to you about it. And
Let's pick a couple of dates, maybe a month or 2 months out, and figure out when board members can do it. And we'll get ourselves educated.
does the board have a particular area of the law that?
No conditional use.
Maybe you could inquire of Judge Durkin if there's something that he sees, either from us or from the ZBAs and the other DRBs that are, common misconceptions or bad decisions that he gets on a regular basis. I mean, I would certainly like to know what other people in our position are doing wrong. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure he's got a list.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's all the other ZBAs, but still, we want to be mindful.
We do pretty good. But, it's like the case today, we have a PUD that references a document that nobody can find anywhere. So
Right.
there was actually a recent court decision on regulating subdivisions when the documentation is absent.
Can you send that around?
Really?
Basically, it defers to the property.
So we apply to this.
I mean, as a general legal rule, if there's an ambiguity, you're supposed to construe it in favor of the person who's adversely affected, but that doesn't mean that's the case here.
Right.
That's very general. Does anybody have anything else that they've been wishing they knew? I mean, Judge Durkin was he the Act 250 commissioner? I think he was an Act 250 in the system before they had the present board. I think he ran the Act 250 decisions in this zone for 10 years or so.
Don't we have a few other PUDs in this area? Are we going to be dealing with this consistently?
Oh, I think I know one is coming up.
Yeah, although each of those probably has its own rules, so it might not be helpful to have Durkin trying to help
so
us.
they're not all cut and dry then.
I think they're all going to be case by case because we're going to have to go by the old PUD rules for each one, right?
That's right. You should think of PUDs as being a type of subdivision.
Yeah.
So it basically sets up the land development for that parcel just as, say, the subdivision that created Black Mountain Estates.
But don't they have their own zoning?
They have more or less documentation of how the parcels are to be developed.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's good for, say, the retreat, it's good for the hospital, a couple other ones, but some of it's right there.
Oh, so the change in zoning could make a huge difference.
And as a side issue, I think no one really knows how to take something out of PUD,
Right.
at least as far as I can tell.
Well, whenever you have a subdivision, it creates a vested right that you really just can't dissolve,
Yeah.
which is one of the problems with subdivisions.
Can we see if we can do the training before the meeting? That seemed to work last time,
Sure.
to come a little early. I mean, we came very early last time, but maybe.
I thought that
We
was
did at
fine.
4:30.
Did that work okay for the
That
other?
worked okay for all of us.
Yeah, I get out at 5:30.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could,
You're close by, though.
you
So
can
hop,
come in
skip, and
early.
As long as we get pizza.
Yeah. And actually, Attorney Slayson, because we had it so early, did it gratis.
Really?
Yeah, so it was really
Wow.
quite generous of him.
That's great. Anything we want to talk about since we're ending early? Now's the meeting when we should take up any administrative matters. If there's something bothering you or questions we have.
Well, in the future, I might have to buy out on this one because I've been asked to go on the board of Holton Home, but I haven't made my mind up yet, so.
Well, there's no application yet,
Yeah, I know. So,
but when there is, you should disclose it.
I would, believe me.
Anything else? All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.